Welcome, everyone. Welcome. Thank you so much for joining me this evening. My name is Mr. Aejis, and I will be your teacher for the session. I am a teacher in the real world, and I stream indie games, classic games, retro stuff, and first-time playthroughs. But tonight, we're going to have a lesson on summer health and safety. We talk about all kinds of things related to health and wellness, like this, like self-talk, like dealing with the fear of being cringe, social media health and wellness, supplementation, vaping, cannabis, anything about your physical and mental health and well-being. So tonight, we're going to talk about summer health and safety because it is the middle of June. Summer has just begun, and things are heating up. So let's talk about it. Why does this matter? Why are we talking about this? Why is this such an important subject? We all know that it's getting hot outside. We all know, well, we shouldn't stay out too long in the heat. So why is this so important? Because heat is a main cause of over 2,000 deaths every year just in the US. It causes hundreds of thousands of injuries every year. And the vast majority of these are completely preventable. We can't talk about summer health and safety without mentioning climate change. It's not just an increase in heat. It's not just an increase in global temperatures that is undeniably happening. It's also leading to a greater amount of mosquitoes and other biting insects. Also increasing animal encounters as wild animals venture more often into human territory. It also increases allergens, the amount of allergens in the air. This graph, sort of startling. Annual average temperatures. This is all well-worn territory that I'm sure you've heard before. But it also isn't just an increase in average temperature. It's extreme weather days, individual extreme weather days that are increasing in dramatic measure. You can see the pattern appearing all throughout the Southwest, into the South and the Gulf, with 100 extreme weather days in some areas per year. Not just high temperatures, but extreme low temperatures, extreme weather events. We can't change much of this, at least not as individuals. But we should be aware of taking care of ourselves, doing what we can do to protect ourselves and the people around us, the people we care about. And it's not just about heat, it's about humidity, as I'm sure some of you are dealing with right now. Like Marcus, for the next 5 days in an extreme heat warning. To take into consideration humidity, you can look at what's called the heat index. The heat index, used by the National Weather Service, helps tell you how hot it actually feels. It's not just that it's 90 degrees out. It's not just that it's 104 degrees out, at least in Fahrenheit, 40 degrees Celsius. Humidity makes it feel much hotter. So you can look at this heat index that takes both into consideration. Now, this red area doesn't mean that it's 135 degrees or feel like it's 135 degrees. These are just numbers that help you figure out how hot it will feel. In these green caution areas, between 80 and 90 degrees Fahrenheit or 27 to 32 degrees Celsius, if there's moderate humidity, that makes it feel much hotter. When the temperatures are in the 90s, like it is here, and there's high humidity, over 60%, then you're getting into extremely dangerous territory. When it gets super humid outside, it's harder for you to cool yourself off. It's one thing for it to be hot, but if you're able to cool yourself off in the shade or with some nice refreshing wind, it doesn't feel too bad. But at these levels, your body's cooling mechanisms start to struggle. Dehydration sets in faster. And the risk of heat illnesses increases dramatically, which we'll talk about very soon. Even moderate temperatures, even temperatures in the mid-80s, can be dangerous with high humidity. And you know the old saying, it's not the heat, it's the humidity. Well, it's both. But now we're going to talk about another measure that's being talked about a lot. Something that's being talked about more and more on weather stations, on social media. It's another measurement of how hot it feels outside. Some of you might have heard it. Maybe you would like to take a guess at what I'm talking about. Well, the line, it's getting violent if it's over 90 degrees. Yeah, the sun is assaulting you. The sun is a deadly laser. This measure that we're talking about now is called wet bulb temperature. That seems like a weird name. If it seems like a light bulb that has gotten water in it, well, it's not. What it means, this wet bulb globe temperature, it's a meteorological term that is used to describe the lowest temperature that can be achieved by evaporating water in the air. But what does that mean? What does that mean? Well, that relative humidity that's used in the heat index we just mentioned, relative humidity is just the percentage of water vapor in the air compared to how much water vapor the air could hold. Wet bulb globe temperature is a more comprehensive measure. The way they'd measure this is they use a thermometer with the bulb, you know, that bottom part of the thermometer.
Go outside. No.
I knew someone would get this. Would request that. The sun is a deadly laser? Yes. How they measure wet bulb globe temperature is they use a thermometer that has a wetted wick or a wet cloth around the bulb, that little bottom part of the thermometer. And as the water evaporates, it cools the bulb, just like your skin cools you by sweating. The temperature that is shown then on that thermometer is the wet bulb temperature. The wet bulb temperature number that's reported, that also includes, though, not just the temperature and that humidity, but it also takes into consideration the amount of solar radiation and the wind speed, because all of those things affect how hot it feels. At the same 90-degree temperature, two different humidity levels would feel very different. Two different days that had a completely still air and one that had a nice breeze would feel very different. And one in which the sun was beating down on you would also feel hotter. So the wet bulb globe temperature takes all this stuff into consideration that the heat index does not. Basically, it measures how hot it could be outside where you could actually continue to cool yourself by sweating. Because when those measures get up hotter, when they get higher than that, your body isn't going to be able to cool itself. You're not going to be able to survive out there for very long. So the devices might look something like this. It's got a little regular globe thermometer and the wet bulb thermometer, and then a dry thermometer. Takes all the measures into consideration and spits out that number. You can also buy them commercially at, whatever electronic store you fancy. But these wet bulb globe temperatures essentially measure how well sweat can cool you. If there's already a saturation of hot, humid air, the sweat on your body, that heat doesn't have anywhere to go. And if there's no wind to blow that heat away from your skin, it's going to stick right on you. This measure was developed actually by the U.S. Marine Corps. Well, by the U.S. military at the behest of the Marine Corps. They noticed that in the 50s, so this measure isn't actually that new, it's been around for quite a while. They noticed that trainees at the hot Paris Island Training Center were getting serious heat illnesses on certain days, even though the temperatures outside didn't seem that bad. It's because the other factors were making it impossible for their bodies to keep them cool. So military doctors and scientists, researchers developed this measure to help them figure out how long can we actually be out working hard in the sun. So if you see a wet bulb globe temperature that is over 88, that's a high danger. You need to take about 40 minutes in breaks each hour, meaning you need to spend most of the time resting, not working. We're seeing more and more wet bulb globe temperatures over 90. Extremely dangerous temperatures, coupled with extremely dangerous levels of humidity. So this measure is being used more and more often, not just in military contexts, but by people who work outdoors, construction, athletes, sports teams use measures like this. So your local weather station might report the wet bulb globe temperatures nowadays. If they don't, you can look them up yourself, because this can be very useful for you to plan, well, how much can I actually do outside today? In the increasing temperatures, the increasing humidity and extreme weather days, we will continue to see more and more days each year with these extremely high wet bulb globe temperatures. Meaning you need to be very careful and spend most of those hours that you're outside resting, finding shade, staying hydrated. But even then, hydration isn't going to help as much as it would normally because, again, your sweat isn't going to be able to cool you. So if you live especially in one of the areas that's going to be most affected as temperatures rise, in the US Southwest, for example, pay close attention to these measures. Because at 95 plus, at a wet bulb globe temperature of 95 plus, human beings simply can't survive an extended amount of time outside, regardless of how well hydrated you are. Especially if you're doing any kind of work outdoors, playing sports, especially for maybe the young people you know, the elderly folks that you might know, your younger or older family members. Pay close attention. Frequency of these very high extreme temperatures are rising. In 2023, we set new records for the intensity and frequency of extremely humid heat. In all of the areas in which you see these pinks and oranges and reds, we saw a drastic increase in the amount of these extremely hot days, coupled with high humidity. Throughout the Gulf, especially Central and South America, in continental Europe and in the UK, and all throughout coastal Asia. But in most circumstances, hydration does help a lot. And it's maybe the most important single factor that we can take care of. And there she is, our favorite enemy in Deltarune. First and foremost, though, if you feel thirsty, you've already been thirsty. The saying is that once you're thirsty, you should have already been drinking. Water, I mean. Thirst comes later. The sensation of thirst lags behind a little bit your actual thirst, your actual need for water. So once you start feeling thirsty, realize that you've already been thirsty. Your body has already been craving hydration. People, of course, always ask, well, how much water should I be drinking every day? And the answer is, I have no idea. Because that 8 to 10 cups idea, that 8 to 10 cups mantra, is way too variable. Everyone is different. Everyone has an individual need. You need to think about what your actual daily needs are. Notice throughout the day how much water you need to drink to not get thirsty throughout the day. And then drink that amount. Of course, you see there, think about what's needed to stay clear. And, well, you know what that means, and I'll touch on that in the next slide. And when it's hot, increase by at least 4 cups. By each of those tiers that we saw, low risk, high risk, extremely high risk. For each of those tiers, increase another 4 cups. I'm not going to do the thing where we measure how much sweat we've lost, weigh yourself and see how much sweat you've lost and drink a certain amount of liquid to replace it. Nobody weighs themselves and checks the amount of sweat they've lost. Drink a little water. Exactly, Lel. Exactly. And if you're going to be doing any kind of physical exertion, especially outdoors, add another 20 ounces. That's a 20-ounce bottle, 2 hours prior to that exertion. Make sure that your body has plenty of liquid on hand. And for every 15 minutes that you're doing physical work outside or sports or whatever, have another 10 ounces. And then if you do weigh yourself, if you are someone who tracks your sweat loss, have another 20-ounce bottle for every pound of sweat lost. So if you feel thirsty, you've already been thirsty. Don't get stuck on a strict amount that you need to drink, but make sure that you're getting enough so that you don't feel thirsty throughout the day. And bump up the amount of water you're drinking if you're going to be exerting yourself. 20, 10, 20. Like Susie and Chris here, making sure that they stay hydrated with that sweet, sweet cup of juice. This is what we mean by staying clear. We're talking about urine. Not myrin, urine. This is what your urine should look like. Yes, we're talking about pee. We're all adults here. This is a health class. Your urine should be clear, mostly. This shows that you are well hydrated. If your urine starts to look more like this, starts to look more like a weak apple juice, maybe drink a little bit more water. If your urine is starting to look more like a weak beer, you're getting quite dehydrated. If your urine is starting to look like, well, a real beer, then you're extremely dehydrated. These are actually dangerous levels of dehydration. And just like with feeling thirsty, if your urine is starting to look like this, you've already been thirsty. You're already dehydrated. This lags behind. And yes, as Dragon says, if it's red, see a doctor. You're in trouble. Or if it's blue. If it's blue, if your urine is blue, see a doctor. You're in trouble. Or green or whatever. It's partially a joke, Raul, but there are some cases in which a person, they take a new medication or something and it can actually cause their urine to turn a strange color. But definitely then a sign, yeah, see a doctor. You're in trouble. Stay hydrated, stay clear. Keep your urine clear And no, urine is not sterile. You cannot drink it. You should not drink it. That's a myth. That whole weird urine is sterile. It's perfectly fine. No, don't drink urine. Cries and Bear Grylls, yeah. Unless you are on the verge of death, out trapped in the wilderness, do not drink your urine. You heard it here first, folks. Do not drink urine. Do not drink raw milk. They are not sterile. They're not safe. And of course, water is your best source of hydration. Water is your absolute best source of hydration. You don't necessarily need anything else. I mean, look at this delicious tall drink of water right here. Yowza! A lot of people enjoy caffeine during the summer months. They like a nice soda out in the hot weather. When we talked about caffeine in our caffeine lesson, summer holidays get themselves associated. Well, sodas get themselves associated with summer holidays and refreshment and being crisp, refreshing you out in those hot summer days. Well, caffeine isn't actually going to refresh you. It's a diuretic. It is going to cause you to lose liquid. And during high heat, during increases in activity, will increase your heart rate and raise your core temperature. So don't rely on sodas at all to help you stay refreshed. I know the commercials make it seem really refreshing, and the bubbles and the crisp. No, it's not good. Don't. It's a treat. Limit your caffeine intake, especially before any kind of outdoor activity or being exposed to open sun. Sodas, especially sugary sodas, can cause a spike in your blood sugar, and that crash can make the issues of heat worse. Headache, irritability, and heavy sugar increase can slow the absorption of fluids, make it take longer for you to feel satiated in terms of your thirst. So don't drink too much soda. Use it as a treat. Don't treat it as a source of hydration. It's not. I'm not telling you not to drink any soda during the summer, but lay off a little bit. Hydrating drinks, though, like Gatorade, Powerade, the generic versions, which is what I buy because I'm cheap, those can be good, but you don't necessarily need them either. They are good if you're going to be sweating a lot, losing a lot of fluids that way, losing a lot of electrolytes. Good for extended activity. Good for replacing or recovering if you are suffering, throwing up, which can happen in some of the heat injuries that we'll talk about. Make sure that you're watching those levels, especially of sodium. Thinking about, am I getting plenty of sodium and those other electrolytes like potassium and magnesium with my meals? So now, since we talked about the importance of hydration, we're going to talk about the big thing that everyone thinks about when they're out in the sun. Things that you've already talked about, class. That's right, we're going to talk about sunburn. And we're going to see some sunburns. Are you ready to see some sunburns? Your favorite, my favorite, everyone's favorite aspect of summer. The sunburn. Like this heroic fellow here with their Batman suntan burn. I mean, I see what they were going for. But sunburns are a serious issue. They lead to over 33,000 emergency room visits every year in the US alone. 1 in 3 people will get a sunburn every year. And in case you think, well, it's just an inconvenience, it's just a temporary suffering that I have to deal with, every single serious sunburn that you experience increases your risk of melanoma. Every single sunburn you get increases your risk of skin cancer. That's correct. And sun exposure, the amount of time we get out in the sun unprotected, accounts for 80% of the appearance of skin aging. 80% of what makes us look older is the result of sun exposure. And in the summer, not only is it hotter, but the rays are more direct. We spend more time outdoors, of course. We tend to wear less clothing. And many of us, unfortunately, intentionally expose ourselves to excess sun. They go tanning, right? Well, what is a sunburn? Well, a sunburn is a suntan. Well, a suntan is a sunburn. There are two different kinds of rays that we're talking about from the sun. UVA and UVB. Both of them penetrate the skin. But one of them, UVA, gets all the way down into the hypodermis. They penetrate the different layers of our skin. And sunburn, which is rated in terms of first, second, and third degree, just like any other kind of burn, reflects how deep that burn gets, how deep the damage goes. Rao, this is what your arm looks like? That's dangerous, Rao. Rao, take care of yourself, Rao. So there's a huge difference in these two individuals' arms. The amount of burn that they've got. So why does that happen? Why does their arm look like this after sun exposure? Well, everyone has melanin. And you know what melanin is, or at least you have some idea. Melanin is a skin pigment. It's what accounts for our skin tone, whether darker or lighter. The amount of melanin determines how dark our skin tone is. Melanin is produced by cells called melanocytes, which reside deep in our skin, spread throughout the skin cells. The skin uses melanin to protect itself from ultraviolet burns. Because melanin scatters UV radiation, absorbs some of it. It keeps it from penetrating as deeply. Now, when you expose your skin to increased levels of ultraviolet radiation, because it is radiation, folks, your skin responds by causing an increase in the production of melanin. If you are fair-skinned, if you're light-skinned, you don't have a lot of melanocytes or melanin, you will produce more, and it will lead to a darker skin tone in the areas that were affected. However, this leads to a very unfortunate and very prevalent myth. One that is heavily capitalized on by tanning salons and various beauty influencers, that somehow a base tan protects you from sun damage. It does not. It does not work that way. Your skin does produce more melanin, which does help to absorb or scatter UV radiation after the fact. But all that it really does is show where the damage has already been done. And it only provides between 3 to 4 SPF of protection maximum. And we'll talk about what SPF actually means in a bit. But it doesn't actually provide very much protection at all. If you have naturally high melanin, people who are darker skinned, they don't need to expose themselves to sun damage first to get that level of protection, that very minimal amount of protection. So it's sort of a catch-22. You need to expose yourself to dangerous skin damaging radiation to get a small amount of protection. And then you need to keep exposing yourself in order to keep the tan. It isn't worth it. The amount of protection doesn't really do anything. And all you're doing is intentionally exposing yourself to increased levels of melanoma risk. And as I said, one bad sunburn can up to double your risk of a skin disease. It's just not worth it. Because the damage is cumulative. It adds up. It doesn't just go away and then, well, I got another bad sunburn, but I recovered from the last one, so I'm back to even. No, it just keeps adding up. And that damage is irreversible. There's no way to undo that damage. There are no treatments available. There is some promising research that people are doing, trying to find ways to undo the cellular genetic damage that exposure to ultraviolet radiation gives us, but nothing immediately on the horizon. You get the little joke there, on the horizon, like the sun. Anyway, bare skin can begin to be damaged and get burned within 15 minutes. One other problem people encounter is that they don't realize they're burning because the redness and the sunburn, the physical appearance of the sunburn, might take over an hour to appear. So you might get a full extra hour out in the sun getting burned before you even realize that you've been burned. I do want to point out, though, darker skin does offer more natural protection, but it is not immunity. People who have darker skin tones can still develop skin cancer. They can still develop skin disorders. They can still suffer from skin damage from the sun. The darker the skin tone, the more natural melanin, yes, it is greater protection, but it isn't total immunity. And they can still experience skin discoloration and advanced aging of the skin, especially in less pigmented areas, like the palms of the hands, the soles of the feet. So people who have darker skin tones should still take precautions and protect themselves. Everyone should do what they can to protect themselves and the people they care about. Of those three sunburn levels, the first is a mild sunburn. Like this individual here, with what looks like a ham-colored discoloration on their arm. Yes, Ra, that delayed reaction is an absolute killer. Because it could go from this to a much worse sunburn in that hour that you don't realize. Mild sunburns are generally just some redness. It might sting. The skin will be dry. It might swell a little bit, and you might feel a little bit of peeling. It doesn't mean that this doesn't still have danger. It doesn't mean that it's not still increasing your risk of skin diseases. But this is that first level. The first level of the skin. The first layer of the skin has been burned. Like a nice honey glazed ham. You can treat these very simply, though, with some aloe lotion. A nice cooling aloe lotion, but again, these types of things, they just soothe the burn. They don't actually heal it. There's nothing that's going to actually undo that damage. A cool compress, a cool wet rag pressed to the area, again, might help soothe it. Don't go with cold, though. Keep it nice and cool. And maybe take ibuprofen or aspirin, depending on what you can take, if you do experience pain from it. The next level, though, a moderate sunburn, it's going to be darker red. It's going to look more like this. Much more pronounced, much more visible. A nice orange red. Well, not nice at all. But this will definitely have more swelling, and it will be much more painful. At this level, you're definitely going to experience blisters. The skin will start to blister. Liquid will start bubbling up under the skin as fluids start to build up. Skin will start to peel after because that skin is dead. Those skin cells are dead. They will peel like a snake. And you'll have that terrible, terrible itching. You can still treat these at home though with a cool bath or a shower. Again, not cold, but cool. Make sure that you're using either a very mild, non-abrasive, non-irritating soap or just no soap at all. You might want to pick up a hydrocortisone cream. But make sure that you're not popping any of those blisters that appear. Do not pop blisters. Unless your doctor advises it, in which case they would be the one to do it for you. Don't pop these little blisters. Your skin is bubbling up that fluid for a reason. And you shouldn't pick at the peeling skin either, because it's attached to skin that is still alive. You don't want to be peeling away extra skin that doesn't need to be peeled away. Let it naturally flake off. I know it's irritating, but let it go. Wear loose clothing so it doesn't irritate that skin, doesn't scrape against those blisters or scrape against those peeling skin areas. Maybe a hydrocortisone cream might be recommended. Talk to your doctor or nurse. But just to help you stop itching, because again, there isn't any treatment. You can't undo the damage. You can only deal with the symptoms. The third level, those severe sunburns, those are going to be a deep, deep purple. And yes, these are some pretty grody images. Deep red, deep purple. The skin is actually going to be moist because you're actually deep into the skin layers. You're actually into the layers of fluid. Here you're going to see severe blisters. The peeling is going to show like it's getting all the way down to those deep layers, because it is. Where it actually does look like a snake with a fresh new layer of skin. Mr. Krabs, no! Sponge Boy Amy Bob! I'm being boiled in the soup. Wait. Boiled in the pot. I've never had crab soup. I'm actually allergic to shellfish, so I don't really eat crab. But yeah. That looks quite disturbing. And yeah, these big, large blisters may be very painful. Again, do not pop them. If they pop on their own, if they break and start to ooze on their own, clean them gently and cover them. This is the kind of blister we're talking about can happen with a 3rd degree sunburn, a severe sunburn. But just cover them. Do not pop them yourself. If they pop on their own, just gently cover them. But seek medical care, because this is not something that can just be treated at home on your own. A doctor might prescribe you with burn cream or some kind of pain management. But your skin has experienced a severe trauma if you have a 3rd degree burn. But beyond the sun burning in the short term, the damage it can do to your skin and what it makes it look like. So a truck driver spends a lot of time outdoors in their vehicle, with one side of their face facing their driver's side window and the other side facing inside the cab. Now the front windows, the front glass of all vehicles nowadays are UV coated. It blocks some of the UV rays. But the passenger windows, the windows on the sides, don't. I'm going to show you this picture of a truck driver, someone who had been driving a truck for 28 years. Not continuously. I mean, I assume they took breaks and went to sleep and stuff, but they did the job for 28 years. This is what it looked like after 28 years of driving a truck. And as I mentioned early in the lesson, sun exposure accounts for 80% of the visible appearance of skin damage, the visible appearance of skin aging. I mean, this person's eyes look like they're drooping even. If you were to just look at one side of this person's face, you might say, well, they look like they're maybe 60, 65. Look at the other side of their face, and that person looks like they're 90. They look like two different people. But that white line there, I put that there. This is what they looked like after 28 years of driving a truck. Because they did not protect their skin. This is from a twin study. These people are twins. Identical twins. One person never wore sunscreen, and one person regularly used sunscreen. The difference is pretty stark. Which of these two people do you think also has a significantly higher risk of developing skin cancer? I mean, even their hair looks more dried out, unhealthy. Look at the discoloration that's developed. The dark spots splotched over lighter spots. The skin around their lips looks more damaged. There are more wrinkles around the eyes. Wrinkles around the neck are deeper and more pronounced. All from sun damage. These photos are ultraviolet photographs. This shows damage that isn't visible to the naked eye. All these people have pretty clear skin otherwise, but you can see in ultraviolet light the damage on all their faces, even this child around the nose. And even a person with darker skin tone, as we mentioned earlier. Darker skin tone, more melanin, is a greater level of protection, but it isn't immunity. It should still protect your skin. So we're going to talk about prevention. We're going to talk about taking care of yourself. We're going to talk about covering, timing, creaming, and your eyes. We're going to be like this smart badger here who covered their skin when they're out in the beautiful sun on the beach, which I don't think badgers actually go to. I don't think they go to the ocean. The first method, though, your primary method of protection, is covering your skin. Just don't allow the sun to get to your skin whenever possible. When in the sun, protect your skin as much as is feasible. Cover it. Like these individuals here, have covered more of their skin. This person has long sleeves. They're probably still pretty comfortable because this looks like a very light, very loose material. It looks like it's still very breathable, but it is protecting the skin from the sun. You might even be cooler than you would be otherwise because your skin is not getting roasted. You're not losing as much water. Yes, whipping out a giant brimmed sun hat. This person with long sleeves as well. They're all wearing head coverings. Keep those materials lighter and loose, but still a denser construction. Darker colors if possible, and make sure that they stay dry. Poly materials, nylons, wools, and silks are all good. Cotton and rayon tends to not be as good. You can actually find clothing that is UV rated, that protects to certain amounts of sun protection. See tags like this on the clothing? That means it has been tested to protect you from the sun. Yes, if hoodies were comfortable in the summer, you might wear them. You can find, they are a little bit pricier, but you can find really good light, loose material, longer sleeved shirts that have a hood like this gentleman has, covering the head. And make sure you are covering your head. Marcus mentioned earlier getting burned as they had shaved their head. Yeah, your head is a source of a lot of your heat loss, but then is also a source of a lot of your sweat loss. And if you get burned on the top of your head, that skin is pretty thin and delicate. It's going to hurt a lot. Sun damage on the scalp is going to hurt a lot. Wear a nice wide-brimmed hat like this fashionable individual. Protect your neck. It's not just a song lyric. Protect your neck with this nice fashionable loose scarf. A nice wide-brimmed hat. Very fashionable. Notice how they're all covering their necks. Because a burn on your neck is also very, very painful and pretty dangerous. What I like about this fashionable gentleman is they're wearing sunglasses. Protect your eyes, and I'll talk about that a little bit more later, but timing, also very important. Limiting the amount of time that you spend in the sun. Doesn't mean you can't go out in the sun, but manage your time. You should be checking the UV index when you are going to be spending time outdoors. But you should be checking the UV index. Be checking the UV index because that is the measure of how much and how intense the ultraviolet light is that is hitting your skin. The UV index will go from 1 to 11. Anything above 8 is considered very high, meaning you have a very high risk of harm from unprotected sun exposure. So take extra precaution, especially around the head area, like we talked about, covering your head and your eyes. Anything above 11, that extreme level of UV index, you should just be avoiding sun exposure at all. Because during the peak hours, those midday hours, 10 a.m. to 4 p.m., you might get 15 minutes of sun exposure and still suffer some pretty severe UV exposure. What extreme UV index means is that 15 minutes during peak hours, say 1 p.m., would be like a full hour of exposure at 9 p.m. Basically, it's about 4 times more dangerous during those peak hours. So pay attention to numbers like this and to the wet bulb globe temperature that we talked about earlier. Make sure you are taking regular, consistent, significant breaks from your sun exposure. The same amount of total sun exposure, 1 hour, for example, spread out over 2 hours, going to be far, far better for you. Like if you put something in the microwave for a minute, it might get hot. If you put something in the microwave for 15 seconds, and then stop it for 15 seconds, and then 15 seconds, and then stop it for 15 seconds, not going to get nearly as hot. But now we're going to talk about creaming. And by that I mean sunscreen. Getting that good white stuff spread all over your face. Get it all over your skin. Rub it all over yourself. On your face, on your chest, on your feet. Get that thick white cream all over your feet. Especially the feet. There are a billion brands out there. Ouch. There's all different kinds of creams that you can get to protect your skin. So how do we know which ones are the best? Well, what's the main number that you hear? What's the main factor that you hear about sunscreens? And that's right, S, P, F. Give me an S. Give me a P. Give me an F. Yeah. SPF. SPF, or sun protection factor. It's a rating of UVB filtering. What SPF means, the calculation for it is 1 over a number. And that number is the amount or percentage of rays that are getting through. To put it into an example, SPF 30 means that it is only letting through about 1/30th of all the rays. So it would take 30 times longer, as Rousey points out, for you to get the same level of exposure to the sun as if you were unprotected. And remember, we mentioned earlier how people think that a base tan will help protect them, and how a tan only gives you maybe 3 SPF. It's not worth it. Not worth it to intentionally expose yourself to the sun to get a tan that's going to give you maybe 3 SPF, but only after you've already given yourself sun damage, and then you have to keep giving yourself sun damage to maintain the tan. No. But again, UVB is only one type of the sun's rays. There are UVA and UVB. UVB is only about 5% of the sun's rays. They are much more intense, but they don't penetrate all the way down into your skin the way UVA does. UVA is more dangerous for your long-term health. So what you want to get is a sun protectant that is called broad spectrum. Not on the same spectrum that I probably am, but meaning that it filters both UVB and UVA rays, both types of the sun rays. There are UVC rays, but the atmosphere scatters most of the UVC rays. They don't typically get to us. So look for something that says broad spectrum, SPF, at least 55. And you use this brand, Rousey. Neutrogena, high quality, well-respected, well-regarded brand, yes. SPF 50 plus is your best option because this means that it is protecting you from 98% of UVB rays. You can go higher than this. There are SPFs higher than 50 and 55. But at that point, it is less and less of a return on your investment. Also, make sure that you're getting water resistant. Make sure that that label says water resistant on it. If it says water resistant, it means that it is going to protect your skin for at least 40 minutes, even when exposed to water. The term very water resistant means that it will last up to 80 minutes. It might not say very water resistant, but it will specify if it is the 80-minute variety. But if it says water resistant, it's at least 40 minutes. But did you know, class, there's a difference between sunscreen and sunblock? Did you know there's a difference? They're not the same thing. They are not the same thing. And what would happen, you ask, Dragon, if UVC rays did get to us? They are the most dangerous type. UVC rays are the most dangerous type. They have very short wavelengths. We can get them, but typically they're from like artificial sources. They're like lasers. Sunscreen and sunblock are different. There are two different things. Too much sun can cause flare-ups of lesions. That is true, Neemcraft. It damages the skin deep in the layers at a cellular level. So, sunscreen and sunblock are different things. They accomplish much the same, but they're two different ways. So here are two different examples. There's a sunscreen and a sunblock. Sunscreens are sometimes called a chemical sunscreen. Sunblocks are sometimes called a physical sunscreen or a mineral sunscreen. So they both might be called sunscreen. But sunblock is a physical or mineral block, and a sunscreen is a chemical sunscreen. The sunscreens are typically easier to apply, and they don't leave a white residue. Sunblocks are generally a white cream. That's that thick white cream that you spurt into your hand and you rub it all over your face, get it all over your exposed skin. Yeah. They work a little bit differently in that sunscreens, these chemical sunscreens, absorb the UV rays. They absorb it before your skin can, whereas sunblocks, they deflect them. Like Dikembe Mutombo, blocking them. You probably don't know who that is. You're all too young. Sunscreens you generally have to rub into your skin. It's not as thick of a white cream, but you do have to rub it. You gotta rub it. You gotta spurt it in your hand and rub it onto the skin. Because they are a chemical sunscreen, though, they may irritate the skin. The chemicals in them might be irritating to your skin, especially if you have sensitive skin. Sunblocks, though, because they're a physical sunscreen, you can just slather them all over yourself because they're just going to be blocking. You can slather them on, and they generally are less irritating. They're generally the better option if you have sensitive skin. Because the ingredients in them, in the sunscreens, are typically chemicals like avobenzene, homosalate, octisalate, octocrylene, things like that. They filter, they screen out the sun's rays. But the sunblocks, like this brand, Badger Adventure, which I've never seen in stores, but now I have to start buying, they generally involve titanium dioxide or zinc oxide. And those are the physical sunblocks. Now, you should not be ingesting any of these chemicals. Not for internal use. But how do we apply this? How do we apply this cream to our skins? Well, typically people don't use enough. That's the first big problem. People don't use enough. Look at the difference between these two hands filled with white cream. One of these is a pathetic, paltry, dribbling little amount of white cream, whereas this other hand is filled with a healthy, virile amount, a large glob of white cream. Which of these two would you rather have? You should use at least 1 ounce. Most people use half of that, and that's just not enough coverage. Pay particular attention to very sensitive areas of your skin, like your feet. Like I said, make sure you get that thick white cream all over your feet. Rub it all over your feet, especially the top of your feet here. It's a very sensitive area, and if it burns, class, that's going to hurt like hell. Your face and your neck, those are very sensitive areas. Can be very dangerous if you get burned there, especially around the lips, the nose, the ears, the eyes, the top of your head, your forehead. Make sure that these are areas you're paying close attention to. Very easy to get burned around those areas, yes, I'll say. Because generally those are areas we don't cover in the summer. We might wear flip-flops. We might go out barefoot. We're not covering our head. We're covering our neck. Vision of Moonlight asks, is it 1 ounce for everything? Well, it depends on how large you are. I mean, if you're 6'8", your feet might need a full ounce. Maybe you got really big feet. But you don't want to be like this individual and just put an insufficient amount and not get all of your skin covered. Make sure that you're getting it rubbed in consistently the entire exposed surface of the skin. Make sure it's an even coat. A good rule of thumb is use a little more than you think you need. If you're using a spray, because they do come in sprays too, spray it close to the skin. Don't spray it really far away. And then still rub it in a little bit after at least. You will get those sunburn patches, as Ralsei notes. You want to reapply every 2 hours. And after exposure to water, which can wash it off, especially if you aren't getting those water-resistant sunscreens and sunblocks. The order that you should put things on, you put your sunscreen on before insect repellent. Put your sunscreen on the skin directly before you put anything else on your skin. That should be your first layer. The insect repellent, if you're going to use that, goes on after. Because you don't want the insect repellent being rubbed into your skin, sandwiched in between the sunscreen. No. No good. Sunscreen first, then your insect repellent if you're using it, and then makeup on the outside. That's your canvas. But if you don't protect yourself well enough, you might experience one of the heat illnesses. One of the two kinds of heat illnesses we're going to talk about. The first being heat exhaustion. Like this sad child here. Heat exhaustion, very common. With signs that might be missed because it's also similar to just being irritated by being out in the sun, feeling weak and fatigued. Well, of course, you're going to feel tired. You're out in the hot sun. Might feel a little faint or dizzy. Some people might even throw up. Muscle cramps and headaches are very common with the dehydration that comes with it. The skin will feel cool and moist as liquids are leaving the skin. Might leave your skin feeling goosebumpy. Still a dangerous situation, even if it's just heat exhaustion, even if it's not heat stroke. So you still need to treat it seriously. Stay hydrated, especially in those higher wet bulb temperatures, those higher humidities. Take lots and lots of breaks, especially during those peak hours, that 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. In most cases, you should be taking more breaks than you are doing work. Yes, you still need sunscreen, even if you do have a tan. Limit your strenuous activity. Again, more breaks than activity. At least doing an even trade. 15 minutes of being out in the sun playing or doing yard work or whatever, and then a 15-minute break. You will be more susceptible to heat exhaustion otherwise. You'll be more susceptible to injury because you won't be paying attention as much. You'll be distracted. Your muscles will be fatigued. You won't be maintaining as good a form of whatever you're doing. I can tell you from experience, it's more likely that you'll hurt your back. You know, you're out there doing yard work, bending and twisting, picking up sticks, moving the lawnmower, whatever the case is. You've been out in the sun, more likely to get injured. To help deal with a heat exhaustion, drink lots of water, but do it slowly. Don't just pound water. Refill those liquids slow but sure. And just like we talked earlier, cool, wet cloths can help. Get some air to blow that heat away from your skin, to let your sweat cool you. If it's particularly bad, an ice pack near the neck or in the groin can help. Those are areas where you have a lot of heat from your core body temperature. That can help to lower your core body temperature. And at rest, elevate your legs, which is common advice for a lot of situations. You get to the point of heat stroke, though. Like this lady with the sun, a deadly laser, personally attacking her. Temperatures above 40 degrees Celsius, very likely that you'll experience heat stroke. That person might actually exhibit signs like they're drunk. Heat stroke does have some similarities to being drunk. People will seem confused. They'll be irritated, agitated. They'll be slurring their words. But their skin will also be hot and dry because they're dehydrated. They don't have liquid left to sweat and to cool themselves. They may faint. They may pass out. Again, like they're drunk. Yeah, Ralsei, it might be indistinguishable from Australia. Very dangerous down there. It's not just the wild animals. And I don't mean the people. All right, prevention first. Prevention first, yes. Stay hydrated. Again, but start early. If it's in those really high temperatures, start hydrating early because you will start losing water immediately. Stay hydrated and start with a big surplus of liquid. Keep your skin covered. If you're thirsty, it's too late. You should have been drinking water sooner. That's right, Rao. You'll also want to do more acclimation, and I'll talk about acclimation in just a second. Heat acclimation. But more of everything. More water, more shade, more rest to prevent heat stroke. To help treat it, again, it's like those severe sunburns. It's a situation in which you need medical care. You need to get that person medical care. Maybe it would be fine without it, but you don't want to take that risk. Begin cooling the person immediately while you wait for medical care. A cool bath, not cold, but cool. Ice packs are good for spot treatment to get the core temperature down, but cool bath or shower, you don't want to immerse them in cold water. And watch them closely for change, because you may need to administer CPR. Now, I can't teach you CPR over stream. I am qualified to teach CPR in person, but I don't have a CPR dummy with me, so maybe we'll do that at some point. Maybe I'll give a live demonstration. But watch them closely for change as you wait for medical care. And yes, all these things, very good advice for someone who's hungover because it is related to dehydration. But what is acclimation? What is acclimation to the sun? It's gradual exposure to the elements. Different from the idea of getting a tan, but it is giving yourselves short daily exposure to the temperature, not the sun, but to the temperature. You can acclimate to warmer temperatures because that isn't necessarily exposing you to the sun rays. Short daily exposure to hotter temperatures and slowly increasing your level of activity in those environments can help you. Always stay hydrated throughout your acclimation period and pay very close attention to your urine especially. And limit the sun exposure during that time, staying in the shade, but still being outdoors. You can make very large gains within just a few days. And within 2 weeks, you can be fully acclimated to the temperature. If you're planning on doing activities outside, like say you want to get acclimated because you're playing summer league, softball, tavern league, baseball, high-pitched, whatever, do those activities out there. Get yourself used to those activities. And maintain that acclimation throughout the summer. But heat isn't the only issue. We talked about how there are other problems during the summer weather. One of those issues is related to our breathing. High temps increase our need for oxygen. We need more oxygen during hot weather. Dehydration also, it thickens the mucus in our respiratory system, in our respiratory lining. It can make it harder to breathe. It makes everything feel thicker and more closed off. So you're going to need more water than usual. But allergens also increase. There's a greater amount of pollen and mold in the air. Humidity can increase the amount of allergens being released by plants. And as we talked about, climate change is increasing the level of these pollens and allergens in the air, along with biting insects. Something that people don't really think about, though, is the fact that during the summer, there is an increase in the level of ozone. Not the ozone layer, but ground level ozone. There's ozone all around us as well. And ozone at ground level is a pollutant. It's more prevalent in warmer temperatures and especially in sunlight, because sunlight and heat react with pollutants in the air, like nitrogen and the VOCs, volatile organic compounds, and they form ozone. Ozone irritates the respiratory system. It can make asthma feel worse. It can make COPD feel worse. It can make things harder for you just because there's more ozone in the air. Morality says it smells like static. Is that one of those things where people can like smell colors? I don't know. Or is it like Chris who licks the TV to taste the static? I don't know. So you'll want to monitor the air quality as well. I know there's a lot of things to take into consideration. The temperature, the humidity, the wet bulb temperature, the heat index, the UV index, and the air quality. But weather sites usually do report the weather quality, the air quality. So check those out. If you can afford an air purifier, it's great to have one in the house. Keep your living spaces clean, keep your stuff washed, keep your sheets and pillows and blankets clean. You spend a lot of time around those, wrapped up in those, breathing in. And please, by God, do not smoke. We've talked about vaping because I don't feel like we need a smoking lesson. There is no benefit to smoking. Do not do it. But avoid indoor candles too. But the other thing that you need to protect, very specifically, we talked about protecting your face, the sensitive skin of your forehead, your neck. Protect your eyes. Your eyes can get sunburned. You can get photokeratitis, which is an eye sunburn. Think about how painful that would be. You think a sunburn on your sensitive scalp would be painful? Imagine sunburn in your eyes. Yes, it can happen. And just like how one bad sunburn can increase your risk of melanoma, one bad sunburn on your eyes can increase your risk of long-term eye damage like cataracts, and yes, even macular degeneration or blindness. And you can get conjunctivitis. The outer membrane that covers the eye, the film that covers your eye, can become damaged. UV rays can increase your risk of eye cancers, those eye sunburns, cataracts, and it's very simple to protect your eyes. Shade your eyes with a hat, wear sunglasses. They look cool, they are cool. Repeated exposure to sun directly into your eyes. Yes, cataracts, macular degeneration, can lose vision. Protect your eyes, wear sunglasses, wear a nice wide brimmed hat. Make sure you're taking plenty of breaks, getting in the shade. Licking the eyeballs will not help you scratchy. They will not. The saliva will not protect your eyeballs. Lizards and stuff, they do that, I don't know, for fun or to clean them or something like that. But that is the content that we have for you. That's the lesson. So the brief reminder is every single sunburn does increase your risk of melanoma. Sun exposure accounts for 80% of the visible appearance of aging of your skin. If you feel thirsty, you've already been thirsty and you need to drink water now. You should consider wet bulb globe temperature because it takes into consideration more issues, more concerns, like how well your skin can actually protect you by sweating. If you see a wet bulb globe temperature reported of over 90, just avoid going outside. Trust me. Monitor your hydration by your urine. If you see your urine getting darker and darker, you should be drinking more water. And if that urine gets red or blue or some other color, see a doctor. Minimize your caffeine and sugary drink use. If you have a darker skin tone, yes, increased melanin does help protect you from sun, but it is not total immunity. You can still suffer skin damage. You should protect yourself as well. Even if you're not concerned with a sunburn, remember that exposure to unprotected sun rays can make you look 20, 30 years older than you are. Cover your skin when you can. Make sure that you are getting a sunscreen or sunblock that is at least SPF 50. It will block 95% or 98% of UVB rays. Make sure that it is broad spectrum so that it filters both UVB and UVA. Remember that there is a difference between sunscreen and sunblock, but they do accomplish much the same thing. And make sure you get that thick white cream, fill your hands with it, and get it rubbed all over your face and feet. But that's what I have for you today for our lesson on summer health and safety. I'm going to turn it over to you for questions. What questions you have about summer health and safety? Comments about the lesson? Feedback? Suggestions for future lessons? I will leave it open to you for now. And make sure you're getting it all over your head if you're bald, yes. But as temperatures rise, as extreme weather continues to increase, more important than ever to do what you can to protect yourself. You may not be able to change what's going on in the world, but you are worth protecting. And yes indeed, Rao, you're right. Snow can give you sunburn too. It can reflect the sun right back into your brain, your eyeballs. Sunburn is not just for summer, it is for the sun. Does peeing blood is bad? Yes, peeing blood, generally bad. Generally not a good thing. And yeah, you can go snowblind HP Memecraft without goggles. Not the Homer Simpson goggles that do nothing, but the good goggles, the good ones. Wear that sunblock and eye protection out in the direct sunlight. Zetsune Alpha, yes. Well, class, this has been another triumphant lesson. I'm so glad so many people came in to enjoy it. Thank you so much for watching this lesson. I hope you enjoyed your time and that you learned something you can take with you. If you did, please like the video and follow the channel here and on Twitch so you can catch our games and lessons live. You can also watch our previous lessons at the links on the screen. And thank you for supporting independent and educational live streaming and VTubing. That's all I have for you today. Class dismissed.